Story 1. I know a guy who was rather obese. He got onto a weightlifting and weight loss regimen and got himself jacked. He did not do it for his health. He did it because he wanted to go to a comic convention as He-Man dressed only in a tiny fur loincloth. Story 2. I once had a guy at GameStop correct me on how to properly pronounce Drizzt in the Drow language. He even snort laughed when I said it wrong. If you know who Drizzt is, then this story needs no further explanation. Story 3. When I arrived at a new school for 6th grade in 1980, I was asked to share my hobby with the class as an icebreaker. I collect Star Wars paraphernalia, was my cheerful reply. I was later voted most unique by the class. I don't think they meant it as a compliment. I deserved it, I guess. Story 4. I was at the Star Trek-themed hotel in Las Vegas the last weekend it was open before they changed themes. I was sitting at Quark's bar, drunkenly commiserating about it with some random other Star Trek fans. We were so sad it was closing. One guy mused, "Do you think they'll build another one?" And I replied, "Well, there was an Enterprise B." Story 5. So recently on holiday, I went deep into explaining the details of aircraft landing procedures, in response to people asking if we could expect airliners landing on a nearby runway. I was pretty baffled people didn't know aircraft always land against the wind. So the nerd was me. Story 6. It was me and a friend. Back when my town first got cable internet, we only had digital subscriber line before that. One of my best friends was one of the first people to sign up. When they hooked it up, he called me about 5 minutes later and said, "Dude, they just hooked up my internet. I'm coming to get you right now. You've got to see this." We went to his house and watched excitedly as he downloaded a large file very quickly. I think we probably even yelled, "Haha." And I still get excited about internet speed. I had to go to the doctor the other day, and I hit over 500 megabits per second on 5th generation wireless technology. Took a screenshot. Story 7. In the campus cafeteria, I saw a guy eating breakfast while watching something on his MacBook with earphones on. He then unplugged the earphones from the MacBook, folded it up, neatly put it in his bag, pulled out an iPad, plugged the earphones into it, stood up, went and refilled his cup of orange juice while watching the iPad, came back to his table, unplugged the earphones again, packed up the iPad, pulled the MacBook back out, plugged the earphones back in, and kept watching on it while finishing breakfast. Story 8. First day of my first computer science program. They were playing World of Warcraft or a similar game on their oversized gaming laptop while sitting in the front row of a computer science lecture, snacking on junk food and wearing an obscure anime t-shirt. After the lecture, they tried to flatter the professor and told the professor they had been counting in hexadecimal since they were 5, which is also 5 in hexadecimal. I had been on Reddit for years prior, and this was the first time seeing a neckbeard in the wild. Story 9. My audiophile friend knows every album in his collection by catalog number. Say, I want Tatsuro Yamashita's For You. He has 2 versions, LP and CD, in his collection. He won't refer to either of them as For You LP or For You CD. He'll refer to them as either RAL 8801 or RACD4. One time I went to his house. He asked me, "Yo, my flightless 025 I ordered a while back has arrived. Let's give it a spin." Who the heck refers to Nonagon Infinity as flightless 025? Story 10. I remember when in high school someone asked if anybody had a Linux Live compact disc on hand. I am not exactly sure why anymore, but I said something like, "Hold on." I fished my compact disc case out of my backpack and asked him which distribution he'd like. I think he chose Ubuntu. Story 11. I once saw a guy in a full-length black leather trench coat, military boots, and sunglasses, full Neo style, Naruto running through the city in broad daylight like it was totally normal. Story 12. It was the early 1990s, and I was working at a place that sold software and personal computers. We had an opening for an entry-level personal computer technician. The young man who applied looked like an engineer from the 1950s. Short-sleeve white dress shirt, clip-on tie, pocket protector, and what we called birth control glasses in the military. He had just graduated and had an engineering degree, and his dream job was to work on the Earth-to-Mars communication system. I walked him to the door after the interview and saw what had to be his dad and brother, both dressed identically to the applicant. Story 13. When I was in school, there was a whole table of kids, who are probably all really rich now, who just sat and solved Rubik's Cubes at lunch. Lots of oily, matted hair and body odor. But I think they were so nerdy everybody just left them alone. Story 14. Art College. We didn't have a sports team, we had live-action role players. The first time I saw medieval cosplay, I was busy not sleeping, getting projects done, and working. A group of students would be out on the quad for months, attacking one another like they were training to siege something. Callouts and a hierarchy ranking system were evident from what I could gather across dorm viewpoints. I don't know how these guys had time to make their gear and be out on the quad during all seasons with our relentless deadlines. I know for a fact, though, off the quad, some Game of Thrones drama was occurring behind the scenes. Story 15. I had a roommate who replaced the calendar in Windows on his computer with a Middle-earth calendar. I forget which one, maybe the Shire one. He wrote the plugin to do it himself from scratch. Story 16. Met a guy in a gift shop who worked at a movie theater in the early 2000s. He said he would get super bored during his shifts at the theater, so he memorized the entire alphabet in Elvish. When kids would come into the gift shop who happened to be Lord of the Rings fans, he would write out their names for them in Elvish. Story 17. One of my friends talked for almost 40 minutes about war strategies and technology because I asked something about my computer. It was really cute and I understood some words. Story 18. Booting a Prime computer, 1980. By entering the bootstrap program instructions in binary via the front panel switches. If I recall correctly, I learned from him how to do it. Story 19. Coworker's son locked himself in an office by playing with the knob. We're all trying to figure out how to get the door open, and one guy pulls out a plastic card and gets it on the first try. He shouts, "First try, natural 20 on my sleight of hand." I was the only one who knew what he was talking about. Story 20. I stayed in a psychiatric ward once, and one guy was going so crazy from boredom that he decided to build his own Warhammer 40,000 game out of paper. He spent a lot of time making the board in pieces and taught me how to play, but I wasn't really interested. He got another guy to join him, and they played a lot over the next few days. From a distance, it just looked like two guys moving pieces of paper around on a table, but they seemed to really enjoy it. It was pretty wholesome, but also really nerdy. Story 21. He made a DIY infrared receiver so that he could use his monitor and PlayStation Portable as some kind of sword, then slash enemies in a game that he also created for the PlayStation Portable. This was around 2009. Story 22. In sixth form, we had quite a relaxed dress code. Most people still dressed relatively smartly, but there was no mandate to do so. One kid in our year pushed the limits of that by turning up in various different costumes on different days. He turned up in a full Attack on Titan costume, cape and all. He was also the type to bring his gaming laptop with him and spend his lunch playing that rather than socializing. Story 23. I was at a bookstore and people were playing Warhammer. Two dudes got in an argument about lore and pieces and why they can't work or something. I stayed for about 20 minutes because what they were arguing about was pretty interesting. Also, the mini armies looked amazing. Story 24. Not as bad as some here, but I went to a friend's housewarming party and was drinking with our group in his kitchen when he realized the other group he knew hadn't been seen for about half an hour. He went into his living room and it turns out, without knowledge or coordination, two separate people had turned up to the party with their full deck of Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards and were having a battle. This would have been around 2008 and we were all 18 or 19, so legally allowed to drink in Scotland with no older adult supervision. We left them to it and retreated to the kitchen where we made Angel Delight with Jim Beam instead. Story 25. I used to go to Gen Con in the 1980s. I've seen more nerdy behavior than I can ever explain. It's like trying to tell people about my experiences in the war. I won't bother telling stories because no one would believe me. Story 26. I remember in high school, two of my friends battling it out on who could name more capital cities in the world. We would have to launch country names at them from an atlas, and the first to answer got a point. They were both incredibly intelligent guys, and I'm not gonna lie, it was really fun. Story 27. One of the guys in my bondage, discipline, sadism, and masochism group made his submissive wear a 20-sided die as a necklace, and whenever she earned a punishment, she had to roll it to see her penalty. Story 28. When I was 10, I read a whole dictionary pocket edition, but still A to Z. Then I read the encyclopedia my parents had. It was the 1980s. Took me a while. When I was 13, I read the whole school library. It was just a room, but I proceeded to read every single book in it, in order, shelf by shelf. I spent every recess doing this. I even skipped a couple of classes, hiding. Does any of this count? Story 29. As someone who has both a computer science and cybersecurity degree, you will have to be more specific. I've worked with people who not only live in their mother's basement, but have practically turned it into their own personal data center. Story 30. Back when that Numa Numa video was first making the rounds on the internet, there was this one girl in my high school who was really into Romanian pop music. Anytime someone mentioned Numa Numa, she would slide into the conversation like, actually, that song is called Dragostea din Tine. And do you know what the lyrics are about? Then she would usually sing part of the song. I hate to admit it, but I don't think anyone else cared. We all just wanted to say, wow, haha. Crazy video, so funny, and she would be sincerely trying to educate us. Story 31. I have several visible anime tattoos, wear a custom jacket with an anime symbol on it, and I'm a proud degenerate weeb. Still, I've met a girl in school who unironically said baka to me. I cringed so hard. Story 32. I did 2 summer internships at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration years ago. At a party, I watched 2 drunk physics majors get into a very passionate argument about the merits of string theory. After receiving an email notifying everyone that we had been added to the summer social mailing list, I sent a reply-all message asking to also be added to the summer social mailing list so I could be notified about things like solitaire games, solo meditation, and single-player game local area network parties. I made a lot of friends. Story 33. One of the nerdiest things I have seen was during a break at work. A guy pulled out a Rubik's Cube, casually started solving it with one hand, and as he did, he explained the algorithms and patterns behind it. It was not just a quick solve either. He went into how each move worked mathematically. By the time he finished, everyone around was kind of stunned, half impressed or half confused. I don't know. It was nerdy, but in a wow, that's actually pretty cool way. Story 34. I had a guy describe to me the entire Fast and Furious franchise scene by scene in a single sitting during a field operation. It was better than watching the movies. Story 35. It was when someone brought a custom-built, fully functional lightsaber to a casual hangout. They explained the design, the electronics, and even gave a demonstration. It was impressive but very nerdy. Story 36. I'm probably the nerdiest person I know in real life. At the request of a friend, I once calculated a very rough estimate for how many people it would take to blow out the sun. Story 37. I must say I haven't seen that many nerdy things. It's either that or I'm so nerdy that a lot of nerdy things are just regular to me. But I think I'll give my special mention to a dude that had a Lamborghini entirely covered in Dragon Ball stickers, back when watching anime wasn't cool. Story 38. One time, I was hanging out with a group of avid readers. They were discussing which books would fit a mainstream audience for about an hour for their book club. I couldn't understand what they were saying most of the time. Story 39. It was me. I was single and just out of college, living on my own in an apartment. I saw a really cute girl at the pool reading a physics book. When she got up to leave, I took my chance and said I noticed she was reading a physics book and that I still have my books from college, so if she ever wanted to come to my apartment to check them out, she could. She quickly shot me down and probably told all her friends about the son of Ted Bundy in apartment 101. Story 40. That would be me. I study Latin, so my uncle got me a copy of The Hobbit in Latin for Christmas. I cracked it open, read the map inside, and said, wow, all the runes are in Latin too. Story 41. The nerdiest thing I have seen was a friend correcting a movie science midwatch, pausing it to explain why it would not work in real life. We all just laughed and let them go on. Story 42. I've been told that it is me. I work in warehousing, data, and design. For fun, because it is cool, I designed an inventory system for the food storage in our basement. We have barcode scanners, and we scan the food we buy into the storage room. When we bring it up to the kitchen to use, we scan it out. I have had training sessions with my teenage children on how to use the system properly. We do cycle counts on occasion. A to-buy report is available for grocery shopping. We have minimum inventory amounts to trigger inclusion on the report. One of my daughters has said, "No one else I know has to be trained to use their basement." Story 43. I probably can't remember half of them from school, but we had some super nerds that were very outgoing with it. The funniest to me was an old friend. I came over and went in his room to see what he was up to. He was 8 inches from the television playing some dragon game, and his girlfriend was on his bed not wearing much. She looked at me and said, "Can you believe he would rather do that than be with me right now?" He was so locked in and yelling at his teammates he didn't even hear it. They stayed together for a long time, but to no surprise, she ended it recently because he spends all his time playing games.